What's good, YouTube? Sensational CLANCY'S here, and I'm back with another time CLANCY'S The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for June 26th, 2020's Vendor Reset. So let's get right into this to see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you want to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the weapons vendor has a tactical ACR with a gear score of 271. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is responsive, unforgiving, and intense. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Hudson, and here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5.50% first aid self-heal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the meat locker. Here the weapons vendor has a tactical AUG A3P with a gear score of 274. It has 18.50% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is meticulous, destructive, and competent. And also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 4.50% reload speed, 12% magazine size, and 9.60% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the base operations. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a military L86 LSW with a gear score of 274. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is determined, adept, and vicious. Also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 273. The armor is 932. Its roll for electronics 1242. And the attributes this has is pistol damage, LMG damage, and enemy armor damage. And also here we got a VX1 scope with 18% headshot damage, 2% accuracy, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the weapons vendor, and here we got a Solcom MK20 SSR with a gear score of 279. It has 148% headshot damage, and the talents it has is competent, swift, and deadly. And also here we got a rugged mini reflex sight with 7% crit hit chance, 5.50% headshot damage, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got a police M4 with a gear score of 282. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is fierce, unforgiving, and skilled. Also here we got a SRSA1 with a gear score of 264. It has 144% headshot damage, and the talents it has is prepared, ferocious, and accurate. Also here we got a Tyrant Suppressor with 7% crit hit chance, 4% crit hit damage, and 5% optimal range. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a Cassidy with a gear score of 268. It has 321.50% stagger, and the talents it has is deadly, self-preserved, and boomstick. Also here we got a Historian with a gear score of 268. It has 144% headshot damage, and the talents it has is meticulous, ferocious, and Historian repeats. Also here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 266. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is responsive, meticulous, and focused. Also here we got an MA70 Express with a gear score of 264. It has 329% stagger, and the talents it has is sustained, unforgiving, and brutal. Also here we got a Surplus SVD with a gear score of 280. It has 150% headshot damage, and the talents it has is dominant, proficient, and disciplined. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1,847. Its roll for stamina 1,141. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, skill haste, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1,206. Its roll for firearms 1,152. And the attributes this has is skill power and burn resistance. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7.50% support station range. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a classic M60 blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a firearms knee pad blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a quick release magazine blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Kerman Station. Here the weapons vendor has a Marine Super 90 with a gear score of 274. It has 297% stagger, and the talents it has is responsive, fierce, and accurate. And also here we got a VX1 scope with 18% headshot damage, 2% accuracy, and 4.50% optimal range. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has a Bakan. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 279. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is brutal, deadly, and Bakan. Also here we got a Historian with a gear score of 260. It has 142% headshot damage, and the talents it has is harmful, competent, and Historian repeats. Also here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 278. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is swift, vicious, and destructive. Also here we got a Cassidy with a gear score of 271. It has 290% stagger, and the talents it has is Predatory, Unforgiven, and Boomstick. Also here we got a tactical MK16 with a gear score of 268. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Skilled, Brutal, and Adept. Also here we got a SASG-12 with a gear score of 283. It has 342% stagger, and the talents it has is Competent, Vicious, and Fierce. Also here we got a Covert SRS with a gear score of 275. It has 159% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Prepared, Fierce, and Vicious. Also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1,317. Its warfare electronics 1,217, and the attributes it has is crit damage and ammo capacity. Also here we got some Gunslinger gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 274. The armor is 871. Its warfare stamina 1,271. And the attributes it has is health on kill, pistol damage, and skill haste. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the Special Blueprints vendor, and here we got a First Wave PF45 blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a Firearms Mask blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got some Electronic Gloves blueprint with a gear score of 256. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 258 stamina and 3,173 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Autumn's Hope. Here the gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1,901. Its roll for firearms 1,224. And the attributes this has is health, all resistance, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7.50% Seeker Mine Explosion Radius. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Last Call. Here the weapons vendor has a classic M60 with a gear score of 278. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents it has is Brutal, Talented, and Vicious. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Ward. Here the gear vendor has an operator pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1,274. Its roll for stamina 1,271. And the attributes this has is health and ammo capacity. And then also here we got a prototype performance mod with 2.50% smart cover damage resilience. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Southpaw. Here the gear vendor has an operator vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1,706. Its roll for electronics 1,211. And the attributes this has is skill haste, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to West 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Tyrant Suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 5% optimal range, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head to West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Tactical Super 90 SBS with a gear score of 274. It has 329% stagger, and the talents it has is Meticulous, Responsive, and Deadly. Also here we got a tactical pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1,161. Its roll for firearms 1,166. And the attributes this has is crit hit damage and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an M249B with a gear score of 271. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents it has is Deadly, Adept, and Fierce. Also here we got a tactical pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,321. Its roll for stamina 1,131. And the attributes this has is Stability and Bleed Resistance. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% sticky bomb damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a First Wave Vector 45 ACP with a gear score of 282. It has 22% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is Brutal, Talented, and Competent. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% ballistic shield damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to West 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an operator mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 897. Its roll for firearms 1,188. And the attributes this has is crit hit chance and damage to elites. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% Seeker Mine damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Spec Ops armor with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 1,789. Its roll for firearms 1,271. And the attributes this has is health, all resistance, and ammo capacity. And also here we got extended magazine with 119.50% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 3% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has an operator mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 273. The armor is 966. Its roll for electronics 1169. And the attributes it has is skill power and burn resistance. Also here we got an operator vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 280. The armor is 1978. Its roll for firearms 1249. And the attributes it has is skill haste, exotic damage resilience, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone weapons vendor has the SRS-A1 with a gear score of 263. It has 154% headshot damage, and the talents it has is ferocious, vicious, and brutal. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 53rd Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a custom M870 MCS with a gear score of 282. It has 326% stagger, and the talents it has is adept, competent, and capable. And also here we got an operator pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 1303. This roll for firearms 1127. And the attributes this has is skill power and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a first wave M1A with a gear score of 274. It has 150% headshot damage, and the talents it has is deadly, unforgiving, and predatory. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an M249B with a gear score of 278. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents it has is dominant, brutal, and prepared. And also here we got a Tyrant Suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 2.50% stability, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, we're going to head to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a 5.52 hollow sight with 7% crit hit chance, 5% optimal range, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to the 5th Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Black Market M60E6 with a gear score of 280. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents it has is competent, skilled, and adept. And also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 12% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 9.80% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ2 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent Enduring on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 926. Its roll for firearms 1242. And the attributes this has is skill power and damage to elites. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1875. Its roll for electronics 1252. And the attributes this has is skill haste, health, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ9 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 109.50% magazine size, 4.50% reload speed, and 3% crit hit chance. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video for June 26, 2020's Vendor Reset. I hope everybody who tuned into it found them something that they needed. Smash on that like and sub button if you hadn't. I appreciate that support, y'all. And I will see y'all with the next one. Take care. Peace.